Did you hear that? Mark leaned over the counter, whispering to his roommate, Dave. Dave looked up from his textbook, his eyes glazed with the glow of his laptop screen. Hear what? It's like someone's at the door, Mark insisted, his voice a low murmur. With a heavy sigh, Dave closed his book and pushed back his chair. All right, I'll go check it out. When Dave swung the door open, a chilly draft swept into the apartment, carrying with it a whiff of rain and the sound of distant thunder. On the welcome mat lay a small, unassuming package, wrapped in brown paper and sealed with a smear of glue. Looks like junk mail, Dave called out, bending to pick it up. Mark's curiosity got the better of him, and he joined Dave by the door. What is it? It's got your name on it. Dave handed the package over. And it's pretty light. Inside the wrapping was a VHS tape, the kind you'd expect to find at a garage sale. The label read Cosmic Pals Episode 1. Mark raised an eyebrow, flipping the tape over to inspect the back. It was as bland as the front, no description, no ratings, just a simple logo of two cartoon characters holding hands around a star. Well, this is odd, Mark mused. Some kind of joke? Maybe, Dave shrugged. But why would anyone go to the trouble of sending you a VHS? As Mark turned the tape over in his hands, a piece of paper fluttered to the floor. It was a list titled 5 Rules for Viewing Cosmic Pals. The first rule caught his eye. Always watch the entire episode from start to finish. What kind of show needs rules? Mark chuckled. Dave leaned over his shoulder, scanning the page. Guess we're about to find out, he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. Mark slid the tape into the ancient VHS player that had been collecting dust in the living room corner, the whirl of gears and mechanical clunks echoing through the quiet room. The screen flickered to life, and the image of a grinning cartoon host filled the screen. Welcome, young travelers, to the magical world of Cosmic Pals, the host announced, waving his hand dramatically. But remember, before you embark on this wondrous journey, there are a few things you must know. The screen went black, and a new scene began. 2 children, a boy and a girl, stared into a starry sky, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of a street lamp. I don't get it, Mark said, frowning. It's just some old cartoon. But as the episode unfolded, the whimsical plot grew eerier. The children ventured into a forest filled with shadowy creatures, their eyes wide and fearful. The cartoon's vibrant colors began to dull, the lines around the characters' mouths twisted into sinister smiles. This is messed up, Mark murmured, his amusement replaced with a growing sense of unease. Dave leaned forward, his eyes glued to the screen. Keep watching, he urged. We're not done yet. The children stumbled upon a clearing where a figure loomed tall and dark, obscured by the flickering light of a campfire. As it stepped into view, the room grew colder, the air thick with tension. It was unlike any cartoon character they'd ever seen, more like a nightmare given form. Remember, the host's voice echoed, always watch the entire episode from start to finish. The figure in the clearing reached out a hand, beckoning the children closer. Mark's heart raced. He glanced at the list of rules on the coffee table, his eyes lingering on the last one. Never watch Cosmic Pals alone. With a jolt of realization, he turned to look at Dave, but Dave was gone. The room was empty. Mark's breath caught in his throat, his eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign of his friend. The only sound was the sinister laughter of the figure on the TV, growing louder and more menacing with each passing second. On screen, the children took hesitant steps toward the figure, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. Mark felt an inexplicable urge to scream at them, to make them run away, but he was paralyzed, his hand hovering over the remote as if it had turned into a foreign object. He swallowed hard, trying to convince himself it was just a weird old cartoon. The figure in the clearing grew larger, its eyes glinting with malicious intent. The laughter grew closer, and suddenly, it wasn't just coming from the TV anymore. It was all around him, in his ears, in his head. Dave, he called out, his voice trembling. Dave, this isn't funny. Silence. The only response was the eerie giggle that grew louder with each heartbeat. The figure on the TV stepped closer to the children, its hand outstretched, and Mark noticed something strange. Its fingertips elongated into sharp claws, digging into the earth as it approached. He tried to tear his gaze away, but it was as if the TV had him in a trance. He couldn't look anywhere else. And then the screen went black. The laughter stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Mark's hand clutched the remote tightly, his knuckles white. He waited for the next scene, his heart thudding against his chest like a drum. But the TV remained dark. Slowly he stood up, his legs wobbly beneath him. He had to find Dave. This was too much, too real. The room felt alive with something unseen, something watching him. He took a step toward the door, and that's when he heard it. A faint rustling, like fabric brushing against the floorboards. It was coming from the hallway, just out of sight. Mark's breath hitched in his throat. He knew he had to get out, but his body seemed to have a mind of its own, his feet glued to the spot. The rustling grew closer, and with it, the chilling laughter of the cartoon figure grew louder. Panic set in. He had to break the rules. He couldn't watch this alone. He reached for the VHS player, his hands shaking as he tried to eject the tape. But it was stuck. The player made an ominous clicking noise, the tape's ends swirling around and around, refusing to come out. The rustling stopped directly behind him, and the laughter grew to a crescendo. He could feel hot breath on the back of his neck, and the shadow of the figure fell over his shoulder, reaching out for him. Mark's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything to help him. His gaze landed on the list of rules, the words "Never watch Cosmic Pals alone," pulsing like a neon sign. He knew he had made a terrible mistake. The only question was, would he survive it? With trembling hands, he managed to turn on the lamp beside him, casting a feeble circle of light into the darkness. The rustling grew more insistent, and the shadow on the floor grew longer, stretching towards him like an inky tendril. Mark's eyes remained glued to the tape, willing it to come free. In a burst of adrenaline, he yanked the VHS out with a screech of metal and plastic. The TV screen flickered back to life. The cartoon host smiled, twisting into a snarl. "You've disobeyed the rules," it hissed, its voice no longer cheerful, but a chilling whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. The room grew colder still, and Mark felt the presence of the figure closing in. He stumbled backwards, his back hitting the wall. The shadow on the floor grew larger, almost touching his feet. He knew he had to do something, anything to break the spell. With a cry of desperation, Mark threw the VHS tape across the room. It shattered against the wall, sending shards of plastic and a shower of glittering dust raining down. The TV flickered and went silent, the shadow retreating, the laughter fading away. Breathing hard, Mark took a tentative step into the hallway, calling for Dave. The apartment was eerily still. He checked each room, his heart pounding in his chest, expecting to find his friend's lifeless body at any moment. But the apartment was empty. In the kitchen, the fridge hummed a lonely tune, the only sound breaking the silence. On the counter, Mark noticed a note scribbled on a sticky pad, the letters jagged and hasty. "Went to the stores," it read. "Be right back." He sank to the floor, his back against the fridge. Dave had left while he was watching the tape. He was alone, and he had no idea what was happening. The only thing he knew was that he couldn't ignore the rules next time. As he sat there, the TV in the living room crackled back to life. The cartoon host's face filled the screen, its smile now a grotesque leer. "See you next episode," it said before the picture cut to static. Mark stared at the flickering screen, his mind racing. He had to tell Dave about the rules, about the shadowy figure. But first, he needed to make sure they were safe. He grabbed his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed Dave's number. It went straight to voicemail. The static grew louder, and the room grew colder. He could feel the figure's presence, watching him, waiting. The clock ticked away the seconds, each one feeling like an eternity. And deep in his gut, Mark knew that this was just the beginning.